Good evening, everybody. Uh, we're trying something a little different for this episode of the Four Mortal Coils podcast, in that we're really just going to discuss current events and how our lives are going. So this should be a pretty fun ride.
Yes.
So who wants to start?
Your mother.
How did
Steven,
you know?
did you say something that you had? You were like, I could talk for however long about something.
Oh, I said I
That's
could
right,
talk
that's
about
right.
boomers for half an hour.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Please.
Okay,
No,
so what's floating around in the discourse? We've got boomers. We've got
I
the
thought
starship.
today's episode is on "Is It Better to Die?"
Oh, right.
Oh, is
So before we actually decided just to talk about whatever for this episode, the initial idea was to talk about, is it better to live in misery than to just die? And we eventually decided not to do that, or at the very least, theoretically do something else. So it's a little bit everywhere.
So is it better to live in?
We could talk about that, I guess.
No, look, I'm good. I had a bit of difficulty keeping up, because y'all are coming in and out audio wise, but I mean, y'all seem to be cleared up now.
Good. I'm glad.
Okay, so I mean, what is this gonna be like? What just grinds my gears or what? I mean,
Yeah, go for it.
Even
Talk about
what
life,
does
dude.
grind
Yeah,
Talk
your
let's
about
do
boomers.
that.
what's been going on.
I
it's
like
got to
that.
stop. Enough is enough.
Let's run that.
Well,
Let's run that. Each
let's
person.
run the Logan's Run
Mhm.
storyline.
Yeah, Steven, what's been going on?
Look, I've been dealing with cult nonsense for like years now. And
Yeah.
like I say, enough should just be enough. So I finally did a terrible, awful sin. I went on Reddit and found a subreddit called Boomers Being Fools, and it's like nothing but cringe content and Karen content, and it's like a guilty pleasure. I mean, it's bad, but I'm serious, people. Like, I was just talking to my mom about this the other day, and I said, I'm really quick actually to ask myself, Steve, are you being the asshole? Like,
Mhm.
are you the problem here? And I was telling her about that question and how it related to boomers and how like I'm seeing online that so many other people deal with the same kind of people that I'm talking about, like, and and how much it needs to stop. And I don't know, it's a bit um cathartic's not the right word. Hold on.
Pleasurable?
No,
Mm.
it doesn't matter. Cathartic works fine.
It's kind of a worrisome thing that so you characterize them as people that don't question whether or not they're wrong about something for a time. Like they don't do that as quick and as early as people that you've met otherwise. But I can't help but worry, though, whether or not that says something about boomers or just says something about people when they get that old. And like, what if that's coming for you and I, and also Tanner, but not Bray though.
I think that of course there are good people out there that happen to be boomers, right?
Mhm.
Sure, it'd be a pretty rough statement to defend. Otherwise,
Yeah, I just had a browse over the top posts on r/boomers being fools, and man,
Oh my
God. I can easily see how this is something. And honestly, there may be something said about, more obviously a lot of this is political, but some of it is just general, like,
Mm-hmm.
to use a boomer word, tomfoolery.
Yeah. No,
I
I keep
use that
seeing
word all the time.
Dementia Donald posts as well, and they're like, they're so funny.
Oh.
And
But I think maybe there's something more to that, though, because an explicitly political example that has an overwhelming number of boomers as guests on it as a medium is the Daily Show's Jordan Klepper Fingers the Pulse series that's been going on since 2016. I mean, it's been 8. Oh my God, that's weird to think about. 8 years that this guy has been going out to the Trump rallies, to the streets, to the any sort of conservative rally, and interviewing these people who are predominantly older people. And there's plenty of young people in the videos too, but most of them are older boomer age people, and they haven't got a clue.
No,
I mean it's probably some
bad.
of the easiest ad revenue or whatever that the Daily Show has made in the last 10 years is that series, because we for some reason get enjoyment out of seeing people who are clearly deluded, but at the same time it's like I remember in 2016 when these videos first started coming out, watching them with my some family or friends or whatever, and we were cracking up, having a great time. Because at that point, nobody thought that Trump would actually get elected to be
Yeah.
president of the United States. And here we are 8 years later, and I'm still cracking up over the videos, but they've gotten worse. And it's like, okay, it's been this long, like, and
When's it
people are still
gonna
taking
stop?
this exactly. Like, when are people gonna kind of like
Grow the
turn it
fuck up.
around?
All
Or
right, let's
and
have
so you,
our fun. Let's all take a big step back and elect someone who knows what they're doing.
yeah, I mean, you
Well, I
get a
think the
little bit more
real
concerned at this point.
well, I think the real answer is going to be after this year, after 2024. This is the ultimate.
Yeah.
This is the ultimate moment. I think this is going to be a kind of a pivoting point for at least the history of the United States. I don't know about the world, maybe the world,
I
but
doubt it.
definitely in terms of the United States. Do you think so? What do you think?
Well, I mean, so like
Hmm.
every moment is conceivably a point that defines the rest of the moments to follow it. I actually get quite tired of like that talk about how like this is going to be a pivotal moment, and I'm not just mocking you, Trevor. I promise. I would let you know if I was mocking you.
If I
But
had a nickel for every time in the last 16 years I've like heard like you've got to vote this year. It's really important. You've got to
that's
vote
what I'm
this year. This
saying.
is the big one.
That's what I'm saying. What I'm trying to say is like life is about to continue. Life is about to go on past the 2024 election, just like it did past the 2016 election, just like it did past the 2020 election. Like people get so caught up in this stuff, and this is why we end up with these career politicians. I mean, people vote them in. I mean,
Right.
they get so far up these people's asses, it's not funny.
Mm.
And it quit being funny years and years before we were born. And what I'm trying to say is like every moment could be considered pivotal,
Right.
especially when tensions are quite as high as they are.
No, you're absolutely correct in that this is going to be annoying. It is just an abstraction. Truly, it is. But I do think it is a useful abstraction given certain opportune moments. That is to say, a decision made here at this point in history could be considered a moment which defines the following couple centuries. I think it can be valuable, something that we do as humans. It can be valuable to evaluate reality according to these means. That is to say, in views of pivotal moments, a pivotal compared to other moments that precede or follow. Like for example, decisions made that eventually led to the creation of the United States. That's a more pivotal moment than my decision to get a milkshake this morning. That sort of thing. Now, we might talk about like the butterfly effect or something like that. I feel like that's a conversation on the horizon of this particular thought. But I do think it is valuable to evaluate reality according to those means. Now, the connection to like these career politicians and that sort of thing, that's its own conversation too. Mm. Yeah,
What
weird.
what I'm trying to say, Trevor, is that not to give the Bible any kind of credit, but like there's nothing new under the sun.
Hmm.
That's ultimately what I mean. There's nothing like, don't get me wrong, we're developing new things all the time, but I'm talking about the way that we kind of interact with stuff.
Hmm.
You know, the way we interact with the world is changing, but like perhaps the meaning of it it hasn't changed. And it's just like the good man said. I mean, our brains are too small, our adrenal glands are too big, and so on, and they're going to continue to be too small and too big, respectively.
Yeah.
And so we're going to continue to act out like children.
To support what you just said now, I can't help but think of like a wavelength, like looking at a like a signal, let's say, and like a brain scan, or just think of a wavelength and sound. If you look at it really up close, it looks like this. It's all this change happening all the time. But if you back away from the wave, if you go all the way back and look at it from a series of like millions of years, suddenly it becomes a very still line, and there truly is nothing new under the sun.
Well, you know what I prefer to call it, and what other people I've like heard people talk about is it's like steady state.
Mm.
Like something's always tugging you one way, and something else always tugging you another way, and so you stay kind of in the middle. And you're absolutely right. If you zoom in all the way, there are lots of this noise, lots of variation. But if you back away from it, those it kind of cancels out.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's
it's
why
really
climate change isn't real.
thanks, Tanner.
Right.
I can't help but think of how all of this. We've got Tanner giggling. I can't help but wonder how much this has to do and how much it's reliant upon ourselves. This comes up to like last episode, but I can't help but think about how it's everything is new under the sun insofar that I see things in terms of everything being new or like not new under the sun, and I see change insofar as I'm looking for change. I think here's one axiom I like to think of, or one general way of viewing reality. Every axiom has some degree of value. That is to say that if I list out a statement, I can scaffold and lead myself to making and get to the statement in such a way that it has value. You can evaluate reality according to those means. So I could tell you that all humans are fundamentally violent, evil things, and then I can go around and then I could find fundamental things about the acts of humanity to then support that assertion. I can lead myself to that point, and I could also talk about like life is fundamentally redeemable and worthwhile, or better yet, I could talk about how fundamentally life is a misery and how we should all be antinatalists or something. That is to say that fundamentally none of us should
I
reproduce.
hate that term.
Oh yeah. Oh man, you should be
I
on
hate
our
it.
community. That's been an ongoing conversation.
I know. I've stepped. So like not trying to be mean or anything for those who watch, but like the other day I started talking to an individual. I just stopped. I mean, there's no point. There's no point in continuing on, and that was like the only interaction I've had all week. And like that's why I don't get on the Discord quite as often as I would like to, is because I'll be busy with my job, and I want to seek common ground with somebody. And so like even though it sounds like I'm advocating for people listening not to join the Discord, I'm actually wanting you to join the Discord. We need other people to talk to. We need fresher perspectives. We need
We've been having the same 5 conversations for 4 years.
Yeah, we got to that point.
Like I used the term bad science the other day, and someone took offense to that. I just don't care. If you don't know what bad science is, then there's no conversation to be had. Like you and I are not on the same wavelength. That we just need to back up and continue on. In other words, and
This
so it's
is
like
a
Tanner said.
Right. This is a conversation I was actually talking, I think, either with my mom or somebody else about, is sort of the way that discourse is today, historically, sort of overall. But, for the United States, one of the most important founding principles was that the citizens were looked at to be relied upon to talk about issues and discover what was truly best for the country and its people and stuff. And so there was an expectation sort of that there would be the marketplace of ideas, and people would be like in a a Greek forum kind of deal, and people are just talking about issues and talking about what's good, what's bad, how can we solve these problems, and using reason as a tool, as the best weapon that we had for navigating these sort of issues. And I don't remember exactly what prompted it, but I was talking about some various examples of people who had been led astray from reason, and I remember bringing up like sort of the intertwinedness of conservative politics and what's the word that we use, evangelicalism or evangelism, and sort of the how people, I describe it as people who go to their weekly echo chamber meeting, which can be said about anything. This could be considered a weekly echo chamber meeting. But it's sort of the idea that we, as opposed, encourage each other to talk to new people and get new perspectives constantly, and sort of defend your positions or your reasons for believing something. Whereas if you are part of something like a religious organization, a very particular evangelicalism here in the United States, the sort of modus operandi is very much not to seek out other perspectives or engage with other people. And I think that's a lot of the reason that we had a lot of trouble back in the philosophy club days, is just because people who were already within that particular kind of worldview and belief system didn't need to go talk to anybody else, or really go out, I'll put it this way, go out of their way to seek out new people. If they had like a booth or something set up and they were selling cookies and you went up and talked to them about something, then they would probably be happy to oblige you. But we got far fewer people like actually coming out and seeking out this club that was like, hey, we're talking about everything. We're talking about God. We're talking about all ethical implications of things like that. And I know that was...
Real quick,
Yeah.
Bray, like, I think it's important to suggest that we four here are more alike than we are different. I mean, anybody could see that. But I don't think that this is an echo chamber. I think that there's a part of an echo chamber that we don't have, where like if I say something not in perfect step with you three, I'm not necessarily accosted for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or like there's no pressure to conform, so to speak. I think those parts make it specifically not an echo chamber. And I think make it special.
I think personally we also have differing enough opinions on various topics that we really can't be considered an echo chamber anyway.
How fucking dare you, Steven? I mean, that opinion, you really got to work on that, man. God, I don't know, but I feel like God's a little... He likes you less for having thought that. There is a room you can go to.
Steven, I'm going to pray for you.
You're going to have to go to the dark room. There's no
Get
lights
in line.
or windows.
Get in line. Yeah, get in line. No,
well,
like,
and that,
so,
yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you guys get what I'm saying, though. Like,
Sure. Yeah.
I've had that thought about this group before as well. Like, good Lord, like, it's looking more and more like we're an echo chamber. And then I have to tell myself, well, not really. Almost every topic that we've done so far that I've thought to myself, oh, we're all going to share an opinion about that. We got in here and talked about stuff, and it was, quite stimulating. So, I mean, that's good.
There's also no expectation or innate acknowledgement that any one of us, or even the combined four of us on a particular issue, that our word is law.
No.
That we have to be right by virtue of saying it or something like that. That'd be nonsensical. So there's that. But
that leads me to a good question.
Yeah,
go for it.
It's a question that was proposed by actually one of my students. Talking about being in an echo chamber made me think of it. And the question was, are we that different than our parents and grandparents? Kind of ties us back into the boomer talk a little bit as well. Like, are we that different than the cursed boomers? I mean, Trevor, you were trying to ask about this earlier, and I actually kind of wanted to talk about it. Like, are we that different?
Well, this is really difficult
I mean,
because,
generationally,
yeah, Tanner, it sounds like you got something.
well, I mean, generationally speaking, um, that particular generation of people, which silly concept already, dividing people up by when they were
It's
born and whatnot,
arbitrary.
but
Yeah,
I mean,
it's completely arbitrary.
they I will say did live through a particularly different era in American society than we have. They inherited the post-World War II, like, massive booming American economy. We were pretty much the only world power to not suffer massive damage after that whole fiasco in Europe. So we exploded. Our economy exploded. Our GDP exploded. They basically had the world handed to them. They inherited probably the strongest economy to ever grace the face of this planet, the best
And they act like
education
it.
system that ever graced this planet. And they had this massive, like, sentiment of independence instilled in them, psychologically, fundamentally, because they had the means to support, being that level of independent.
Mm.
So we are definitely generationally different because we inherited the aftermath of all of that. We are going through the downward slope of what they were experiencing. I mean, it's probably non-feasible for most Americans to ever afford a house. I mean, you could fucking buy a house in what, 58 for, I don't know, what, 10 grand, and you were making what, 8 grand a year? I mean, it's a much different time. It was
Yeah,
obviously they
we're
have a more independent spirit. They could afford to have that self-centered, narcissistic worldview. They had all the
And
means to
they act
have
like
it, and they act like it. That's a fundamentally, generationally, something just imbued in them. That's what they've always experienced. So having that worldview challenged now, where we all have to actually, pitch in and share. I mean, look at the generation before them, the greatest generation, the people who, went through the Great Depression, the people who built the American Union culture, our FDRs, our Huey Longs, like these massive champion populists of the people who basically preached we have to help each other if we are going to, get through all of this. If we're going to be a country, we have to work together. So it's
we
just
kind of had
amazing
that
to me
moment
how
with
that,
COVID.
yeah, it's just amazing to me how that sentiment was just like totally lost on the next generation.
It's an interesting thing to say. First of all, it's like, we're coming down off of the high of the latter 20th century, which, as somebody who loves tons of cultural landmarks from the latter 20th century, I completely understand.
There's a particular reason the peak of human civilization, a la The Matrix, is 1999.
Yeah.
It is something to say, though, that a lot of things I hear from the children of the greatest generation is very much like, well, or at least the conservative side is very much well, I worked for everything I got. You picked yourself up by your bootstraps and quit giving
Yeah,
those
and that
government handouts.
and that worked. I mean, sure, yeah, it was a much different world. You didn't need to be skilled to like pick up a trade. You can just apprentice. You could just show up.
Tanner, I don't mean to interrupt you or anything, but it, and I'm not trying to sound too left here. Like, what I mean by that is, I can imagine that if anyone like watched through my um uh clips here on TikTok or watch through the whole videos on here, they might think I'm actually incredibly left, and that's just simply not the case. But not to sound too left, but that shit only worked if you were, you know, uh, heterosexual, for example. I mean, like,
True.
so Tanner, I only bring this up because I hear it so often that, oh yeah, that worked for them. No, the fuck it didn't. Actually, though, like, no, it didn't. It only worked if you were heterosexual. It only really helped you if you were white. I mean, it just, in their generation, they were racist and homophobic and meant to be, and meant to
That
do
is
it.
true.
And of course we're
Well,
talking about America. I can't
But what
speak to
I'm
other
specifically getting
geographies.
at Stephen, is it was easier to lift oneself out of poverty 80 years ago than it is now. They had a greater means to themselves to support themselves. So,
Yeah, and what I'm suggesting is that it was only easier if you were these predetermined arbitrary characteristics.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course. I mean, it was a much. I mean, this was back during Jim Crow. I mean, for
That's
goodness
that's
sake.
what I'm trying to say. Like what I'm trying to say is we still have people living among us who happily put those laws into place.
Yes,
And
we have people living
we
among us, leading this country, who were
yeah,
educated by educators born in the 19th century,
yep.
which
So,
is outrageous.
so to
And
give
one more
a
point on that, these are, yeah, Trevor, I just wanted to plug this in here. Is like this is the same pool that makes up the vast majority of the voting lot who are yearning to go back to a time when America was, as they say, great, or they yearn to make America great again, which any person with two brain cells would immediately respond with, well, when was America great in the sense, and a lot of these people are talking about exactly that time back when I suppose they were growing up, and the situation was great for straight white people that didn't have any other issues going on, but it obviously fails to account for literally everybody else. Yeah,
So-
Trevor, sorry, I just wanted to point.
Sure. So one of the things I think about when we reach this point in this discussion, talking about like the state of American affairs and that sort of thing, I like to point out, and this isn't just an American thing, but this is just a existence thing. That is to say, human existence up until this point. We are way better off, and if you look at it from that sort of grand generalization of taking in what Stephen and Bray have accounted for here, and also Tanner, which you brought up as well, we are doing in that respect way better than our grandparents were doing, and their grandparents were doing astronomically better than themselves as well. I do
Absolutely.
think we're doing. I do think there's reason to be an optimist in the way that society goes. I do think we are doing a lot better than our forefathers were doing, or
We are
forebearers were
certainly
doing.
more educated.
And I think that's true not just for the existence here now in the United States. I think that's true for all of humanity through time. And I think the reason why we look back and we see these huge, just gaping caveats and problems with the American society up until this point is because we have aspirations. Like Bray, you have aspirations. I just heard them. You had a particular idealization of what actually makes what would have made America great, and you see the things that are counter to that overall approximation of what it is that you desire. And just like that, no wonder you don't see America up to this point as beautiful, because that's just not. You need to have goals. I mean, you're a human person in society today. You as your bare existence have to have some sort of aspiration. And I can tell you right now, there will come a time of that. Call me an optimist. There will be a time where a lot of the problems that you and I currently surmise as fundamental to an American in the early 21st century will be no more. I don't know when it'll happen, but if I'm just listing them out, I mean like racial divides, that sort of thing, or huge discrepancies here, there. I do think, just to the fact that time is quite a long fucking thing, that problems will get resolved. But when we reach that moment, at the end of the day, where the book closes, and all of a sudden everyone is this one particular hue of brown, or however it ends up, I think they're also going to have their own problems. That is to say, they're going to have an idealization of what it is that they want out of their society. That'll be a very different story from ourselves, and it'll lead on to something else. That is to say, the reason why I bring up all of this, that is to say that if you look for greatness, greatness will be found. I mean, think of just the thing with Thomas Jefferson and the way that he resolved the whole thing with the Barbary pirates, where basically he said, like, "Hey, we're a secular nation. We're not a Christian nation. Why do you still attack us?" That was a beautiful sentiment. And like after that, he like blew them all to hell because they were like fucking pirates. But at the same time, he had slaves. Where you look for greatness, you will find greatness. Where you look for absolute unbelievable horror, you will find it. due to the fact that this is just time
For sure.
and space, and this is just the way that it works. So if you want to say America was never great, you're absolutely correct in saying that it was never great. And you're also correct, as strange as it sounds, when you look for greatness, it waits for you around the corner. And that's one of the strange things about these conversations, because I want to touch upon what is truly in all conversations. I want to believe, just like that one thing that you mentioned just the other day with Matt Dillahunty, I want to believe as many true things as possible, that sort of thing. With that sentiment in mind, that goalpost put in the ground, I can't quite say that America was never great per se, but I also can't say that it was ever great at the same time. It's the strange contra interaction here. Because if I have my ideal society in my mind, then America has never reached it. But at the same time, I can't say that it never did something that was beautiful and worthwhile. And that's just one of those strange things about this conversation, because I can't quite reach into it. And that's sort of with all of these thoughts in mind, of this frame of reference of seeing society as this thing that was never great, and at the same time, I can't see it as great.
Real quick,
it's really difficult,
Trevor. So the idea that I'm having trouble with here, though, is that we can under the way that you're thinking, we can recognize if something is bad, talk it out, but then perhaps we're supposed to do nothing about it. What I mean to say is that even if we just have that simple conversation of, am I the asshole? We've done a lot of good work. You know what I mean? We've thought about it. What I mean to say is, if we're all recognizing similar problems, there's a lot of merit in trying to solve them. And I do think there's a good deal of optimism ahead. Like, there's good cause for optimism ahead. Rather, I really think that as time goes on, people are going to become more acceptable. In general, or at least
I mean, look at the last 60 years of American society. I mean, the abolishment of Jim Crow, the acceptance of homosexuality, at least federally, and by the average person. I mean,
that's what I'm saying. It's coming down the line. It's coming down the line. And look, I see it all the time with my students. I see it all the time with my students. They're younger than me only by maybe 10 years. And they are so much more accepting than anyone was when I was their age.
Right.
And there's a lot of room for optimism, but that does not mean that these people get to ruin shit on their way out. Enough is enough. Like I say, these boomers we keep electing to office. And by the way, we keep tossing around terms like boomer. Of course, dear listener, you should interpret this as being hyperbolic. Like we just agreed upon, me and Tanner, the word boomer is actually entirely arbitrary. I mean, it's just like, oh yeah, if you were born in this segment of time, you're a boomer. Miss me with that crap. What I'm really after is, are you okay with people minding their own business? Okay, if you're not, you need to leave. You need to get out of the way. And that's the bottom line. That is the bottom line. We've got too many of these people in federal office that just, keep on going and going and going, and they're getting older and older.
I think that's the overall issue that we're touching on right now. And I think this reason, I'm sure there are many others, myriad reasons, but I think one of the main reasons, Stephen, that you feel this way is due to the kleptocracy, the situation that we're currently dealing with as a society in the United States. I think what happens is we're currently encountering an issue. That is to say, this kleptocracy moment where it's just full of old people, whether you see it in the House of Representatives, Congress especially, and then you see it in the presidential candidacy of the two oldest candidates, old as dirt, as I'm sure Stephen would say himself, old as dirt presidential candidates. I think we've encountered a central problem. And yeah, exactly. And I think we've encountered a central problem here in the United States. This is one of the central issues for Americans today that I think all Americans are gravely aware of. They can try to ignore it if they want, but they don't do very well. The fact that our two candidates are fucking old as dirt. And I think that's the reason why we have this.
Absolutely nothing in common with the average American voter base.
Well, certainly not with Tanner. or me, And the reason why I bring all this up, the reason why I want to touch on this
So
explicitly.
Trevor, I will interrupt you just a little bit there. I think they've lost touch with reality. Like I'll go one step farther than Tanner. It's not that they just can't relate to me, this young hip dude. That's not what I'm talking about. They've lost touch. They don't know where they
Yes.
are. Neither
Am
one
I
of
out
them.
of touch?
I
No,
mean, like, have
surely
you
it's the
seen the
children.
state of Pelosi? I mean,
Yeah.
have you seen the state that is what's the old turtle looking motherfucker?
Oh, Mitch
Mitch
McConnell.
McConnell.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Ooh.
Yes,
Like, I mean,
those are.
they look
Ooh.
around like, where are my handlers? I mean, like, enough is enough. I mean, like, it's not that they
And it's
just can't
both
relate to
parties,
me.
Yeah,
They can't relate to reality. They can't.
Yes. So I think what
And
happens is
for everything I dislike about him, I will say I do greatly respect Mitt Romney for stepping down the way he did.
He was like, I'm too
Why?
old, and then he
oh
left.
sure.
Yeah. I will say that
That
was
his family fighting the cartels in Mexico, but that's something.
Well,
completely
and
That's what I'm
and
trying to say.
before
All these people are evil. They don't deserve any respect, Tanner. Certainly
before
not
Trevor,
yours.
I know Trevor's trying to get a point, but I think the really sad part about why Mitt Romney, or you could even say Chris Christie, because he did this exact same thing. The really sad thing is that they are doing what like the bar has been pushed so far to where now it's like, oh well, this person's calling out bad behavior, and that needs like glorious praise because that is literally like the best we can do
The
Is
bare
some of these.
minimum.
Right.
minimum.
It's embarrassing, but yeah, yeah. Please, Trevor.
Yeah, I was going to say it's all of this. Is I think this is a serious issue that we have today in the United States. I mean, all four of us just said something about it, and I think the reason why Stephen feels the way he feels about boomers generally is due to this fact or thing that we're currently encountering very harshly here in the United States. This kleptocracy moment. And the reason why I bring all this up is if we weren't having this moment, if this wasn't something we were currently evaluating and trying to encounter, I feel like we would evaluate, like boomers differently. If you really wanted to, you could also see them as the generation that saw an end to the Soviet Union and the Cold War and that sort of thing. And that's no small feat, and that's no small thing. It really varies.
How does that old copy pasta go? You millennials have never spent one day under the threat of nuclear annihilation.
Well, we certainly are now.
Probably because I'm more worried about being able to afford a house or where I'm going to get the money for my next,
Just
a little bit more imminent danger.
No, so Trevor, look, I'm going to say this, and this is getting a little too personal, but I don't mind. It's the way I talk about my own grandparents who are evil. They are unrepentantly evil. One day they will die.
Mm-hmm.
I will remember the good times, and then they will be gone forever. And I mean that. The good times are, far and few between, but I'll try my best to remember them. So, like, when it comes to the boomer at large, I mean, okay, so like, I get it. I get that they went through their times of hardship, but why is it that we can't struggle? Why can't we have a turn?
Yeah.
I mean, it's time. It's just that time.
Right. Is it fair to divert the trolley now that it's killed so many people? Is it fair to the people who've already died to divert the trolley now?
I mean, it really does strike one as the gambler's fallacy. What these boomers are trying to do on their way out, it's like, oh, well, we actually need to commit harder and faster and stronger to all these things that we just need to commit, and then we'll see it through.
It's like the Monty Hall problem, but instead of like a car and then like two goats, it's just like three guys with like a 45 pointed at your face.
It's just also very bizarre to live, knowing that this is my only life, and every day I grow closer to death, and the fact that people who are well on their way out of a natural life are making decisions that are going to affect the rest of my life, for which the bulk of which they will not even be present for.
People who still call it the Google.
Yeah, I'm being legislated by people who grew up in a completely different, like atmosphere and
Ray,
problems.
who frankly don't know what they're talking about.
Right, like you have to look no further than some of these congressional hearings where they pull in people from tech and ask them questions and have
And they
no
have no
idea.
idea. They are not well advised whatsoever.
And while it's definitely possible that tech companies are up to some whatever no good behind closed doors, but if you can't even ask the right questions, what are we doing? So, and then the idea of career politicians and people who are just sitting in there forever collecting a check to essentially just take money from people, and I don't know.
Well, let me ask you a question, Ray. Let me ask you a question. So there are 538 members of Congress, right? There's 438 from 437 from the House, and there's there's only one representative for Washington D.C. That's right.
Yes.
And there's two senators, and I think anyway, it doesn't matter. There's like 530 people in Congress. How many of them in 10 do you think could answer any relevant question about COVID-19 while they were passing legislation about that disease?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what I'm getting at here. When I say that they know nothing, I mean it. They know nothing. That they know exactly zero things, and that they have scooted by completely on charisma to get them where they are, but they know nothing. They're
That
not
I can agree with. If you even just take a glancing look at a lot of I say grassroots, and I'm not trying to dog on any sort of. I think grassroots is admirable, and that may not be the term that I'm looking for. For example, like Bernie Sanders running a campaign, not taking any money from some big organization and just working strictly on, people's donations. I think that's great. I think anybody should do that because it further makes transparent the connection between a voter and their representative. I don't feel like the person that like Bernie Sanders is being bought out by big whatever or anything like that, so to speak. But just looking at anybody who can run for office, it feels like so many people just think, oh well, I'm charismatic, so I'm going to run for office and then go from there. It's like I'd love to see more people who, like someone in the field of medicine who actually cares about the well-being of people, running for office, and they want to go pass something on healthcare, or people who scientists or something.
I'll say something rather quaint. Can we have an atheist in office? The answer is no.
Not yet.
There is that.
I'm not saying that being an atheist should be a prerequisite to running for office by no stretch of the imagination. I'm saying that we should really critically examine the reason why we will refuse to elect one. I mean, if you can put a single word label by anybody and then say, oh, they could never get elected for office, we should probably think about why that is. That's what I'm trying to say.
So one of the things that's really messed up about our current political system, something that I really don't like, is the idea of a career politician. So one of the things that we're dealing with right now are very old career politicians, people who have been politicians since forever, and they're still politicians.
Since before we were born.
Since before we were born, by a long shot. So one of the things that that did occur at one point in time is the idea that. So let me talk about academia for a second. So whenever somebody becomes like a professor, let's say somebody like look at the career of medicine, they spent their entire lives as a radiologist or something. before they retire, they'll get a job for a decade or two working as a professor at a big university and show people, hey, I spent 30, 40 years working as a radiologist and helping people learn about the brain, and I can tell you a stroke from 10 miles away on like a MRI scan. I could see it from 10 miles
10
out. I know
paces.
exactly
I
what
can
it looks
tell
like
you what a
in 10
stroke
different
looks
ways.
like.
I can tell you exactly what it is. And there are people I work with that are like that. They can see a scan. They worked as a doctor for a very long time. They can see a single single coronal scan of an MRI and go, that right there is a something infarction, and it happens within this person probably has PSP or something.
See
You
this
can get really
scan?
precise. Say what?
This fellow just thought about an apple.
Not that good. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is it's that type of person that would eventually become a professor and go on and do their thing and teach something and say like, hey, I know something. You don't necessarily want someone as a career professor who teaches people like graduate school level learning skills that has had no experience in the field. And in the same lens, for the same reason, I don't think a politician that works in like the agricultural subsection of government should be anyone except for a person that has had 30 years of experience working in agriculture. You know what I mean? And for the same reason, I don't want
Okay, so
somebody
Trevor,
working to like legislate tech unless they've had a couple decades of experience working in that sort of environment. Otherwise, it's just
Mhm.
lawyers, and that's what most career politicians were before they became politicians. They had a lot of charisma, and they got a degree in like law, and that's usually what a lot of politicians are today, just lawyers who then use their charisma to get elected.
so here's one of the things that I would say about that. Usually speaking, the career professional, the skilled professional that becomes a teacher at a university, they have to there is always some kind of program, at least on paper, to provide evidence why those people have continued their own education. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how do we vet politicians who do not keep up with current events? We vote them out.
Yeah, we
Mm-hmm.
don't elect them.
But that's not happening.
Right.
That's the problem. It's it brings up, it really smacks of that group of Chinese people or Japanese people. I can't quite remember which country it comes from, but there's like this strata of people, I think in China, who are like refusing to marry, refusing to have kids, refusing to own property, refusing to work jobs, that sort of thing. They're like totally just like, I quit because
Oh,
none of my
yeah,
interests
that's China. That is.
are being represented. Yeah, and so like we're kind of quiet quitting on life. A lot of us.
Mm.
Yeah, there's an epidemic of
Yeah.
apathy.
That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to say. Like out of all the friends I have, um, I only know one couple with a kid.
Mm.
That's it. That are my age and like mine. Out of the 5 or so, well, I guess not. Uh, let's say out of the 5 or so couples I know about, um, one of them my age has a kid. I'm talking about the people I interact with weekly. I'm only concerning myself with them. Just one.
Mm. Yeah,
Well,
we need
even
to be
like
more engaged.
me, like how could I even consider
How could I? I want
procreation at a
kids.
time like this?
Yeah,
You
like
know,
I
I
don't know
can't.
about
I
you
think if
three,
you
but like I want kids very badly. I've wanted kids for a long time now, and I thought I had the right person to do that with, and I didn't. And
Mhm.
so like here we are. But at the same time, someone working my job, in my parents' generation, could have afforded it.
I think if you take a very good look at like voting statistics for national elections and how people actually turn out to vote, you'll get a pretty good sense of how many people give a shit and how many don't.
Mm.
Just refusing to participate in the most basic civic system granted to you by your civil rights, right?
Right. I work, I've worked at a restaurant for 10 years and have seen numerous people roughly my age come in and work the same exact position that I have for the last 10 years. And almost all of them I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, there might be a couple that I know for a fact vote. And that's not even like saying anything about whether they vote in every election possible.
They just vote,
and they
at
might
some
vote
point.
presidential election and then screw everything else, or
The
even
important ones.
right. But most of them are just completely apathetic about the entire process. They either think that what they do will not affect them in any measurable way, I guess. Of course, until it does, and then they, are sitting there with their hands
Say it with
tied,
me.
wondering
Thumb up
what.
their ass.
Right. Or they think that their vote doesn't matter at all, which is just a tale as old as time, really. But it's really disheartening, and I think about all of the different things that affect these people that I can see, just because I'm very proactive about exploring these sort of things. And I wonder how to get people more concerned about really what comes down to their own well-being and taking care of themselves. And I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like, what can we do at this point?
Well, Bray. I mean, maybe we need to go back to like basic psychology about like these people's hierarchy of needs. Why am I going to spend time abstracting about voting whenever I need to work a job to feed myself and barely
Right.
feed myself? I mean,
And maybe that's the dilemma that we're in, is, the process by which we solve the problem is overshadowed by the problem that we're having.
Maslow's
So
hierarchy of needs. Yeah, it's a good way. I don't mean to interrupt, Bray, but
no, go.
Oh, thank you. Well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a good way to evaluate this, but at the same time, in that we don't have the same ability to buy property and have a kid at 22 like our grandparents were. But at the same time, I don't know. I think in most ways we're still doing much better than our grandparents were doing, in a lot of ways. And I think what we have now, when the circumstances that we're in presently, is more just of a general voter apathy due to the general dysfunction of the system we see before us, whether it be the kleptocracy that we're currently working with or everything else. And I think really all it comes down to is not so much so talking about like we need to fix this so that this can work, as much as we just need to fix this. That is to say, the political apathy. And the best thing you can do, I can't help but think of something that was done during the 18th century, when this is going to sound kind of like a farce because it is, but Napoleon, when he swept through like Italy and that sort of thing, leading the army of Italy, that is to say the French army in Italy, conquering his way and just invading his way through places like Florence and Milan and all those sorts of things. He established liberal democratic parties. Like he created clubs where people would come together to discuss liberal democracy. He created systems where people could become engaged with the political system in those countries or in those places. And he did the same thing when he swept through Spain and all other directions. He created political systems from which people could start engaging with the political system. And all of this to say is, the only way that this sort of thing can change is if you yourself, like listener, whoever's listening to this, as well as the four of us, go out there and start talking about it, and start talking about politics, and start talking about engagement. And not so much so like you need to vote for my candidate. Right now. Yeah, exactly. What we need to do is all of us need to find ways to get our family and our friends more engaged with the political system. And only that's going to start to see the fixing of the system at large. That's really the solution here. It's to go out there and start talking about the important, the incredibly necessary voting process here in the United States, whether it be for something like the primaries or midterm elections, or most importantly, without a doubt, most importantly, your local elections, the things that are happening around you that you most certainly have control over, especially if you say and do what I'm currently telling you now. If you go out there and you get engaged with the people that live around you, your neighbors, you don't just talk to people that are 7 states away, but you get to learn people's names. You can make serious actual change in your local system around you. You could make life better for yourself. You can do all of these things. You just need to be engaged.
People realize people realize the exact amount of power they actually have over their like local jurisdiction. If you just show up to like city council meetings and like make good points, they have to vote on them.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely right. And the same thing the same thing is true for the school system and just everything that involves the local county that you live in, the local area that you're currently reside in. Get to learn some names, and start to become a
So
facet of
look.
your
I
smaller
hate to
society.
bring it up this way once again,
Mm.
but the fact is, if I go, me, Steve, a teacher and everything, if I go to a local municipality type of thing, to the school board, to talk to these people, I am not about to be taken seriously.
Mm.
I mean, like,
Why is that
we
specifically?
really need to talk about this sort of thing. In certain geographies in this country, we still have a lot of people who are just racist,
Mm.
who are just homophobic, who are just whatever.
So
I'm
certainly, you're absolutely, Stephen, you're 100% correct. And if I were in your shoes, and I have been before, all I would say is, the thing I would say is you go out there, you find your friends, your loved ones, those sorts of people, and you
Oh,
see
for
if they'll
sure, that
take your
doesn't
hand
stop me
with you.
from speaking.
No,
Like,
no. Well, that's a
hopefully,
fact. Certainly.
yeah, hopefully the listener understands that, like, this should empower you to speak, not to be silent.
Certainly. So what I would say is, hand in hand, form your own subset of your local political system. Go in with 4 or 5 friends and sit together and support each other and love each other and make stories together. Something really worthwhile. Get a
That's what it
matching
takes.
T-shirt. That sort of thing. Walk in together and talk about the things that are worthwhile. And if everyone shuns you, and if you were to walk up to that podium and say something that means something to you, have your friends there to support you. And even if they're not there, just know that states away, I also support you. And there is somebody out
Yeah,
there
there
that
you
agrees
go.
with
There
your
you go.
opinion.
right.
Like,
Anywhere
those
there's-
people do
like,
exist.
People group together,
Trevor,
I'll be there.
Trevor, you're 100% correct. All right, and I've already like started down this road gladly.
Mm.
Like, I've got a good friend who, will look at me and say, why are you doing anything at all with these Northeast Louisiana Pride people? Like, that's
Mhm.
simply not your kind of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not. They're really not. I mean, like, making a culture about like being gay or whatever, I don't think is a good idea.
Mm.
But at the same time, Trevor's exactly right. We have to form a line. We have to say to these kind of people, it's this far and no further.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
And continue
Now,
talking.
and
Get
to
very
Trevor,
good at talking. Please.
oh yeah, I was just going to say, to your credit, as somebody who has done exactly those things, has organized on a local regional level, and then moved on to organize at a state level, and then even moved on to dabble in national organizing, particularly with college students all over the country. It's, first of all, incredibly rewarding, not only by the people that you meet and the things that you accomplish, but it's enriching, and it also gives you a grand sense of hope for the things that you aspire to achieve. I never felt more powerful than to be surrounded by the leaders of other organizations just like mine, all across the country, meeting, in person somewhere and talking about, what was going on, what was going to happen next. So similar to what we spoke about in the last episode, I mentioned that if you really care about the well-being of other people, admit yourself to a scientific practice, but at the same time, that goes hand in hand with become active in public discourse.
Not even a scientific practice. I mean, just enter any humanitarian effort at all, no matter how small or large.
Right. What I meant by that was not particularly scientific in the sense of like a STEM field, but practicing sort of rigorous reason, even employing sort of scientific thinking. You can do that even like me, like I'm not in a STEM field. My career is no longer STEM, but I exude sort of the qualities of being a good scientific mind and being a skeptic, a
In other
reasonable
words,
person.
become educated. Seriously.
Exactly.
And I
And
tell
I
my
know,
students that all the time, the same thing. Like education is power, and we need to treat it that way.
yeah. Now, this is the one thing that this is probably the biggest issue that I see right now. I've already begun to face it for years now, and I think is really. I don't feel like I'm making a big deal out of this, or I'm not blowing it out of proportion. Maybe I could be, but it feels like now we've hit this wall, or at least incredible resistance, where you can be as scientifically minded, as reasonable, as it's clear cut and explained in your reasoning. The data is there. The sources, you have constructed an argument that is impeccable. However, the other side can just go, "Nah," or "I don't believe you," or
Yep.
"That's not
Yep.
true."
Well,
And they
certainly.
and suddenly it's as if you're on equal ground.
So
Like observationally.
certainly. So there are some people that are going to tell you, like you're going to give them a very precise argument. Right. They're going to give you a really precise. You're going to give them a really precise argument for this, this, and that. To which they're just going to say, Alzheimer's disease. It's caused by aluminum in the air. Somebody's going to say some shit like that. They're going to say some off the cuff shit that makes no sense. They're going to trot around.
That's right. We read the comments.
It's one. Yeah, somebody's going to say some crazy shit like that. That's just how it's going to go. And here's what's really weird about that. And this is why living in a democracy is so great. You don't have to convince an autocrat of something. Some off-the-cuff weird guy in Yugoslavia who's the dictator, he's going to do this. You don't have to convince that person of anything. This particular asshole, you don't have to convince him of anything. You just need to go find some like-minded people and some that are nearby so you can make some local change in your area. And if you can't convince somebody
Literally
on the internet...
chimps together.
Chimps together. I hope that's what you actually said. But I heard that it's chimps together. And I completely agree. That's what you said. So yes, you need to go find some people that are like-minded, come together, discuss some things, and keep pairing together and aggregate into an overall super majority of people that can make some political change in the system around you. You're perfectly capable of doing it. Listener, you're perfectly capable of doing it. If you want to make change around you, you're perfectly capable of doing it. Now, I know it sounds strange, but it just starts with talking to one person.
For sure.
And then next thing you talk to two, and then three, and then start a community, whether it be on the internet or just meeting in your local area. Because this all comes down to the local.
So, Trevor, like here's the deal. Even though I say right now there's no way an atheist could win any kind of big office, and they can't. In my lifetime, almost certainly we will see the first atheist president or
big change
atheist whatever. It's coming, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it. And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the day when we have someone in office of any kind. It doesn't have to be the president's office, who's willing to say, "Oh, I actually, know how to interpret this data, or at least I know people who do."
It's coming.
Right. There's got to be a
coming.
Yeah. There's got to be a reintroduction of respect to the scientific practice, and
there has to be. This is absurd.
Respect for reason. Tanner?
Oh, I was going to make a point on something stated earlier. If you really want to know how powerful a small group that's very verbal can be, look at the passage of prohibition in the, I believe, 20s.
Right.
Tiny minority screaming loud enough to convince politicians to act against alcohol in a nation whose gross GDP was like 30% liquor.
We're in the better times.
Yes, we are. Interesting lull there. But I support I just support liberal democratic action wherever you find it. And by that I don't mean the libs, I mean just the active democratic processes wherever they take us.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what's going to come. And I'm telling you. And it's really strange when you realize that throughout the 20th century, since like the 1890s, if you were to poll Americans, by and by would tell you that they think that it is worse today than it was when they were younger. Like America is going downhill. And that happened throughout the 20th century. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
And that was true from the 1890s all the way up to today. Americans, this is like almost the American sensibility. You have to almost wonder, like, what if the reason why it got so great is because everyone thought it's shit and they have to work on it? You know, it's like this night. It's almost like we see the fire underneath our asses, so that's why we run so hard. Americans are extremely hardworking. They are. They work really fucking hard. Just look around. You know, we have this. Look at us today, and this is true, Stephen. This is incredibly true for you, Tanner. This is true for you, Brayden. I know it's true for you. You have this sentiment of I need to run as fast as I can just to stay in the same place. That's a sentiment that all of us have. All four of us have this sentiment. And a lot of listeners do too. We have this feeling inside of us. Why do you think we'll go off and do such great things? It's this attitude. We have this sentiment underneath us that's like a boiling hot fire water that's going to make us shoot out like a cannon.
The word for it
directly
is
into the
called
stars.
conscientiousness.
We're extremely conscientious, and we're extremely tenacious, and in a lot of ways we're tired because this is hard. The sentiment that we currently have.
Oh God,
the sentiment
aware.
is extremely challenging. But nevertheless,
oh God, we're aware.
But nevertheless, we're going to do some great things. I am certain of it. And that applies to more people than have ever been before. That applies to not only the four of us, but also people that aren't the people of many ethnicities and sexualities and gender and all of these things. It's new and it's changing and it's different and it's getting better all the time. I am an optimist in this way. I do think things will be getting better, and I think it's because we think things are going to get worse that things are in fact going to get better.
Hope so.
Well,
it's our nihilistic attitude.
Like,
it's our pessimism that makes me so
like,
optimistic.
It's the Watchmen problem.
What do I do?
What?
You pass the Social Security. Oh God.
Yes.
Welfare.
Yeah,
But
I think whenever we actually post this episode, we're gonna have to give it the political episode or something like the getting involved, or I don't know. I think this became the politics episode. It did immediately.
I want you to go out and organize with your peers and vote.
Yeah,
we got to get like, hey, I need you to vote. You know,
that's
what it is.
Listener at home, Jeff Stevens, form a union. It's time.
It's time.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of unions here in California. It's a big deal. It's a damn big deal. You should see it.
Yeah, it's a union state.
Damn.
For sure.
Most certainly it is.
But we should send off from Tanner, I think.
Yes. I think we do.
Indeed.
I think it's about time. All of you, dear listener, I'm going to start saying that because I love the way Steven says it, are beautiful. The same with our speakers here today. You wouldn't believe how beautiful you are. I can see it. All that kind of stuff. And Tanner, feel free to not exit me out because I think that's good enough.
I'm trying to think of some somewhat intelligent parting words for this episode.
Say something intelligent.
Quick.
If you've gleaned anything from listening to us just go off for a little while, it's that you should be politically involved, no matter your political beliefs. If you want something done, these things have to start with, you or joining something already in motion, become politically active, join a humanitarian effort. If you want to see change, you have to be that prime mover for those things. Everything starts with us. I mean, this is a nation of the people, for the people, by the people, to quote, number 16, Abe Lincoln. It has to start with you. The state is the state should be a service to you. But if you want it to do things that benefit you, you have to be active. You have to be putting in that effort to ensure you get that same effort. If you want to see something that you want, you have to, fight for it. It's just majority rule. That's how, our great republic tends to work.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Bray, any final words?
Bray, yeah, you got an exit?
Yeah, there's never been a better time to get involved and get active. And there's never a better time at any point in your life to recognize the immense power that you have as a constituent, as a voting individual, and as a member of these United States. I'm telling you what, and this is going off of my pre-prepared speech that I came up with in the 15 seconds before I started talking. People don't read as much as they used to. This is just a given fact. But I'll tell you, one thing that will get you fired up more than anything else is reading literature by the authors of America, or by
Read
really
the newspapers.
really influential people who have helped craft where we are today over the last 300 years. And you realize that these people were just like us. They were sitting around like, man, this shit sucks, let's do something about it. And they were really organized, and they got together and made one of the most incredible things in the history of the planet happen. And that power still exists today, if not even more, widely available because of the world that we've crafted. We started off like, man, these boomers, and then we got to a point where we're like, well, things aren't as bad as they have been. We have the benefit of hindsight, but they can still get better too. And that starts with you and your friends and your family and all the people that live next to you. So yeah,
This
I encourage
nation
everybody,
was
go out there.
built by highly motivated 20-something-year-olds. Remember that.
So that's my piece.
Stephen.
Good stuff. Well, I'll keep it brief. It's kind of like this, if you don't vote, if you don't get active, you can't complain. All right? Y'all be good.
How's that? Live long and be reasonable.
Yeah, seriously.
Cool.
And with that, I believe this ends this episode of the Four Mortal Coils podcast. As always, please join the Discord. Leave any comments you want on any of our media. We do read the comments, and we appreciate any interaction, because we frankly love all of you.
We crave your
Some
We
crave
will judge
interaction.
you for your comment. No.
Yeah.
Be excellent to each other.
Yes. With that, I think that's it.